So the MLB trade deadline just wrapped up a couple hours ago, and my opinion on the Red Sox trade deadline is the exact opinion that a lot of other Red Sox fans have, and it's completely underwhelming what this team did during the trade deadline, considering where this team is right now, considering that this team is competing to be in the playoffs, like they are the second seed in the wild card standings, and considering a lot of the American League teams, especially teams like the Rangers and the Seattle Mariners, even teams like the Yankees, the Blue Jays, all those teams that are contending, even the Angels, considering, they're well beyond not making the playoffs, they all made big moves this deadline where the Red Sox, they really did not push the needle. And it's just the same story over the past, 4 years where this team doesn't really make this big momentum trade to really push the needle. And it just seems like it's deja vu all over again. And so, yeah, just like a bunch of other Red Sox fans, I'm also underwhelmed with how this deadline went. And I'm frustrated because this team, again, they have shown that they are capable of being a playoff team. And obviously there are a lot of holes with this team right now, and they didn't really address them. And so I'm just going to talk about the trade deadline, the two trades that were made in the past 24 hours, and talk about those. Like, this team should have been a lot better than they were 24 hours from now, especially, they had the off day today. They don't play many games on Thursdays, and the trade deadline was today. So Craig Breslow had an entire day to just cook up trades and figure out what to do with this team. And also, they just had a series with the Twins in Minnesota. Literally, the general manager was literally in the same MLB stadium as him. So considering the Twins were a fire sale this entire trade deadline and the Red Sox didn't make any moves, and I'm going to get into Joe Ryan because he's a huge topic in this trade deadline for the Red Sox, but that's kind of the biggest thing to me that I'm really upset with. But I'm going to first talk about the trades that happened, and I'm going to start off with the Steven Matz trade, who was traded from the St. Louis Cardinals. Funny enough, Craig Breslow makes a trade with the former Red Sox GM in Chaim Bloom. So honestly, it's kind of like the Spider-Man meme where they're just pointing at each other, two Yale people making a trade between each other. But it's a 1-for-1. Steven Matz comes to the Red Sox, and in exchange, the Red Sox deal Blaze Jordan to the St. Louis Cardinals. And I feel like a lot of people, at least Red Sox fans, to a majority, some people either like this trade, some people are kind of, why are we giving up Blaze Jordan? And I'm fine with this, and the reason why I'm fine with this is because Blaze Jordan is going to be a Rule 5 draft pick after this season, which means that if he is not on the MLB roster for the Red Sox, or I believe the 40-man roster, actually, yeah, I lied. If he's not on the 40-man roster by next year, then any team can pick him up in the Rule 5 draft. So it seems like the Red Sox have no plans in having Blaze Jordan be a part of this team. And so that prompted them to trade him to a team like the St. Louis Cardinals for a reliever in Steven Matz. And so I can't complain with Steven Matz. In my opinion, I think this is fine. The bullpen, as of right now, it's the fourth best bullpen in all of MLB, which it's good, but I definitely think there's room for improvement with this bullpen. I mean, first and foremost, this bullpen has been extremely depleted over the season, especially at the beginning of the year. Guys like Brian Bayo, Richard Fitz, Tanner Houck, like all these guys weren't pitching quality games, and they were getting taken out within the third and fourth innings. And so the bullpen had to take on a huge responsibility for the season. Guys like Greg Weisert, Brennan Bernardino, guys like those names had to pitch a lot of games early into the season. And so getting more assurance and getting more arms in that bullpen, I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. And so I can't complain with getting a guy like Steven Matz. It adds another lefty in that bullpen, and considering how dominant of a righty rotation the Red Sox have, it makes more sense to kind of imbalance, but balance it out in the bullpen, acquiring another lefty reliever. And again, it gives this team more depth, more depth in there. And for example, in the Phillies series, especially in, the 10th inning and things like that, when Aroldis Chapman was out of the game and guys like Garrett Whitlock, players like that, in the 10th inning, there was really no great options to go with to get them these crucial wins. And, you had to rely on guys like Jorge Alcala. You had to rely on guys like Chris Murphy, which, albeit he has played well since coming off of Tommy John, but also guys like Brendan Bernardino. I think he's a fine reliever, but I don't think he's meant to be put in these late inning situations. He's more of like this opening or an opener type of reliever. And so, again, it addresses a lot more depth, and it can give players like Bernardino, Chris Murphy, players like that, even Justin Wilson, who he's been pretty solid this year for the Red Sox, but this month of July, it hasn't gone well for him. Just adding another strong left-handed pitcher to this bullpen to give less innings to Aroldis Chapman and all the other lefty relievers on this team, it definitely helps. And so it can also result in guys like Bernardino and Chris Murphy and any other relievers that the Red Sox can option. They can have the ability to do that. And considering what this team gave up in return for Matz, I can't complain either. And then the second trade, which honestly came up as a shock, which was Dustin May being traded to the Red Sox. I honestly did not expect him to be available in the trade deadline. I haven't really heard any buzz about that, but I guess I didn't realize that he was an unrestricted, or I guess he was hitting free agency at the end of the season. So I guess it makes sense for the Dodgers to kind of take away from that. But the main piece that the Red Sox gave up for Dustin May was James Tibbs, who was involved in the Rafael Devers trade. So essentially, in a way, Rafael Devers was traded for Jordan Hicks, Dustin May, Kyle Harrison, and then whatever the other 20-year-old relief pitcher was. But regardless, for Dustin May, I mean, at first I was a little bit excited to get a guy like Dustin May, considering he's kind of, I wouldn't say a household name, but when you think of Dustin May to a lot of MLB players besides, I guess, Dodgers fans, since they see him on a day-to-day basis, but at least like hearing that name, you'd believe that it's a good thing getting Dustin May. And while I definitely don't think that this is a bad trade overall, it's definitely underwhelming for, considering the Red Sox were expected to get a high-end starter like a Merrill Kelly or like a Dylan Cease, players up to that caliber, and getting Dustin May, it's completely underwhelming. And, for Dustin May, he has definitely regressed ever since he got Tommy John surgery. He just hasn't been the same pitcher, but he has good stuff. He has a versatile pitching mix that I do enjoy. I mean, his last start was actually against the Red Sox, and he pitched pretty well for the most part, besides giving up the home run to Alex Bregman. He did pick up the loss, but overall, I think he went on a stretch where he K'd 5 Red Sox players in 2 innings, so the stuff is there, and, I don't think he particularly looks bad, but, and again, I will admit, I think he is an upgrade over a guy like Richard Fitz, or any of the back end players, even Walker Buehler, for instance. I think he does upgrade the pitching rotation, but that is very marginally. And so I feel like this is a trade that the Red Sox made because they weren't able to get a guy like Joe Ryan, which I'm going to briefly talk about in a moment, but they weren't able to get Joe Ryan, and so they settled for a guy like Dustin May for a lot cheaper, and yeah, it kind of results in this. And so it's just another thing where the Red Sox have to rely on their pitching staff. Craig Breslow's trusting Andrew Bailey to, fix this guy up when it just when he has really no track record of fixing players up. Like, in this rotation, I think Dustin May is the 4th player that has had, Tommy John surgery. And it's so annoying considering, yeah, again, I don't know. Like, I don't know exactly what to expect out of Dustin May. Like, part of me believes that this guy is going to pitch well in the 2 months he's going to play with the Red Sox. I guess 3 months if they make the playoffs. But, I have some optimism about that, but at the same time, his ERA is damn near 5. It just doesn't look good, and considering the Dodgers are selling off, a piece like that, I just don't love it, and I don't love giving away a guy like James Tibbs in that. I felt like they could have done better. This trade is kind of the moral of the story for the trade deadline for the Red Sox. From a sheer standpoint, from like a surface level, I feel like a lot of fans and a lot of people would expect that trading for Dustin May would be a good thing, when in reality, the Red Sox are trading for a guy that has a 5 ERA, a guy that the Dodgers were selling off, which I think, considering the Dodgers are in playoff contention, they're obviously competing for World Series, and they're selling off a guy like Dustin May. It really goes to show the belief that that team has in Dustin May. At the beginning of this deadline, there were so many rumors going out there about the Red Sox, going after guys, again, as I mentioned, Merrill Kelly, Joe Ryan, even Yandy Diaz at that point, even Dylan Cease. Like, there were a bunch of names that the Red Sox were planning on targeting, and they end up with 2 players that don't really push the needle for them. As much as they are, I would say, upgrades, they don't push the needle more. And I watched the press conference for Craig Breslow, and he talked about how a lot of the trades just didn't go their way, and a lot of, teams weren't valuing what the Red Sox were giving up. And to me, I just don't buy into it. Like, I can't see this team, I can't see a world in which this team it seemed like this team wasn't really trying to buy, when they do have the draft capital for this. They do have the prospect capital for this. A prime thing that is going on for this team is, or I guess a prime discussion point for this team is that they're oversaturated in the outfield. They have 5, I guess, quality outfielders that they're trying to balance on this roster. Like, I don't see a world in which Johnson Garcia is going to find a role for this team. Considering, there's Wilyer Abreu, there's Jarren Duran. I know he was involved in trade talks, but it seemed like unless there was an insane trade, like, for example, the number one, I'm blanking on the name, but the number 1 prospect for the Padres that was involved in the Mason Miller trade, like that type of deal for a guy like Jarren Duran, and obviously the Red Sox didn't get that. So yeah, they have Jarren Duran, who's also playing pretty well right now at the 3 spot, and then obviously Roman Anthony, and then Ceddanne Rafael, who's mostly playing second base right now, but he's also obviously the franchise center fielder. They signed him to a massive contract. Like, there's no role that is carved out for Johnson Garcia. He's a top 100 prospect. Why is he still on this team? It makes no sense. And so I don't buy into Craig Breslow saying that this team tried their best when it came to acquiring these players, when they gave up none of their prospects. I mean, obviously I don't know exactly what these trades were expected, and albeit this trade market was very competitive. I mean, again, we saw Mason Miller get traded for one of the best prospects in MLB. A relief pitcher getting traded for one of the best prospects in MLB. That's pretty crazy. And, similar things like that. But at the same time, again, is there really a role that is carved out for a guy like Johnson Garcia? Like, also some of the starting pitching, like, you got to make these sacrifices. And that's what teams like the Mets and the Padres did. And it's just ridiculous to me. I just can't believe that this team really just sat on their hands and didn't do much. There are reports out there that said that the Red Sox were close to acquiring a guy like Joe Ryan, and then there were also reports that said that they weren't close. And so I don't know exactly what they were doing, but considering they were so close to getting guys like Merrill Kelly and Joe Ryan, and not only did not capitalize on it, but a team in the Texas Rangers, who is right below them in the wildcard standings, acquired a guy like that, it just sucks. Every single team, including the Yankees, who completely improved their bullpen, getting Camilo Duvall, David Bednar, players like that, Jake Bird as well. They completely upgraded. The Blue Jays also upgraded. They got Shane Bieber. I know he's not the Cy Young Shane Bieber, but he's still an incredible pitcher. And then, yeah, again, the Texas Rangers, they made that move. Who else? The Seattle Mariners got both Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez. Like, every single team improved. Every single team in the playoffs improved their rosters. And the Red Sox didn't do anything. It just really aggravates me. And again, I want to give Craig Breslow the benefit of the doubt. Like, I've defended this guy multiple times this season, saying that he is the reason the Red Sox are in the position they're in right now. Considering what he did this offseason, trading for Garrett Crochet, trading for Carlos Narvaez, two of the biggest trades of the offseason, also signing Aroldis Chapman, signing Alex Bregman. Those are 4 all-star caliber players for the Red Sox. I mean, 3 of those acquisitions ended up becoming all-stars. I gave him the benefit of the doubt for that. But now, I can't really defend him for this. Like, again, everyone expected this team to make this trade. They have the capital to do so. Like, they don't have a terrible farm system. So why are they holding off? It just baffles me. It does not make any sense. And so, realistically, what is this team going to do? Like, it really does suck considering this team is trending upward. They are, especially after the 10-game win streak, especially going into now, they faced a gauntlet of a series against 3 of the best teams in the National League. They went 4-5, which I know it's still a losing record in 9 games, but they faced really tough, talented, and really showed that they were able to compete. It just seems like this team is still hesitant on what they want to be, on their identity. And it just seems like Craig Breslow is still being controlled by the ownership into, doing what they're doing. I've seen reports saying that a huge factor into some of these trades are, not them wanting to chew up millions of dollars of their payroll. And so it's just so annoying because this team is still handcuffed, and it just seems like Craig Breslow is still being handcuffed by the ownership, not being willing to make moves that are really going to push this team. And again, I am really upset. I feel for Red Sox fans. Like, I truly believe I have the same opinions as a lot of Red Sox fans when it comes to how this trade deadline went, and overall, this is just a disappointment of a trade deadline for this team. Another thing that I forgot to mention one thing that I wanted to add was, the fact that they didn't address the hitting in this team. Again, there's so many holes that this team needs to be fixed. It's not just the pitching side, because there's a lot of holes in this roster holes in this lineup that need to, be addressed. For example, first base. Well, I do believe Romy Gonzalez and Abraham Toro, they're fine options. Like, they're not terrible, but at the same time, they definitely needed to upgrade that position. Again, they could have went for a guy like Yandy Diaz. Obviously, that would have been more of a luxury player, or even a guy like Ryan O'Hearn, which would have been perfect for this team. They didn't address that at all. And I think the funniest thing out of all of this is they did not address backup catcher. The fact that Connor Wong is still the backup catcher for this team is unbelievable. Connor Wong didn't get his first extra base hit until last week. Let that sink in. Like, this dude has been a negative player at the plate, and the only reason why he's on this team is because he is the catcher to Brian Bayo. And so the fact that they did not address that whatsoever, the fact that he is still on this team despite him being a negative in that lineup, it just makes no sense. And yeah, again, Craig Breslow said that this team tried, that he tried in this trade deadline, trying to trade, and get these positive players to help this team out. I don't think he tried enough. Overall, it's just a lot to be left desired with this team. And I really had big expectations, and considering where this team is, they're 8 games above 500, and they're still making these marginal moves. It's utterly ridiculous. This team is ready to compete. They have the roster to do so. They have the talent on their team already to do so. And they just needed the few extra players to get them over the hump and to prove that they are that type of team. And it just sucks because upper management, it seems like they don't really feel that type of weight themselves. If you really break it down with all the trades that have happened, I'm not going to really discuss the Rafael Devers trade, but if you really break it down, this team was more selling than they were buying, considering they traded Rafael Devers. Like that kind of blows my mind. And I seriously don't know where this team is going to go. Like, it's going to be a very difficult month of August, month of September, because this rotation, like, I don't completely trust this rotation besides Garrett Crochet and Brian Bayo, honestly, to really get this team to the promised land, to get them to the playoffs. But at the same time, you're relying on realistically one player to really carry that workload, and you need an extra arm to do so. Dustin May, I don't think is really going to improve that. I think if he was like a five pitcher, I would believe that. But this team needed a number 2 pitcher in that rotation to really get them over the hump, and they just never did that. They needed an extra bat to, get them to be a solidified wildcard team, and they did not do that. In fact, they're like 5 games behind of being in first place in the American League East. They are right there when it comes to the standings, but it seems like they're way further back. It seems like they're kind of in this territory of the Los Angeles Angels. And if I'm a Red Sox fan, to all the Red Sox fans, like, I completely sympathize with you when it comes to how this trade deadline went. Like, I completely agree with, there needs to be frustration involved, because it is frustrating. This team has the talent and they are capable of being in the playoffs, and it seems like the upper management doesn't feel that same type of way. So I'm not going to really rant on more about it. Like, I'm pissed off. I'm going to be completely honest, and I feel like an idiot for backing Craig Breslow a majority of the season. And yeah, I don't know where this team is going to stand, even though they're a wildcard team. Like, it just seems like this team is kind of just settling, and it sucks. It really does suck.